Hi, everybody, and welcome to TGCS. My name is Tim Gallagher, and today we are going to be discussing AP Computer Science A, topic 4.4, array traversals. And in the second of two videos, we'll be discussing traversing the elements of a 1D array using an enhanced for loop, and we'll also talk about the limitations involved in that. All right, let's get started. So if you remember from the last video, we had an array of strings called states, and we have 8 different strings in there. And we looked at how we could traverse that array using our traditional for loop. And you see an example of it here. We have for int I equals 0, I less than states.length, I plus plus. And then inside the body of the loop, we printed out states bracket I, and we use the I as our index number so we can traverse through the array and print out each individual element of the loop of the array according to the index number I. I want to make one slight change to this before I run it. Let's add another line of code. And as I traverse my loop, I'm going to go ahead and take that states bracket I and store it in a local variable called state name, and then print out state name. That shouldn't affect the outcome, right? So when I run this, I still get all of my states printed out, Florida, Texas, all the way down to Georgia. Now, the reason I did that is because I want to show you about a shortcut in Java. We tend to be lazy programmers, and Java gave us a shortcut back in version 5.0 called an enhanced for loop. So let's look at this highlighted code right here. What is this doing? This is traversing through my entire array one at a time, and I'm storing the value of states I in my local variable state name. And then I continue on to process it by printing out each state name. Well, this can actually be replaced with code that looks like this. This is called an enhanced for loop. And you'll notice it's much shorter, much more compact, and it reads like this. For each string that I'm going to call state name within the states array. And what will happen is one at a time, each value from my array states will be populated into the state name variable, and then I can process it within my loop. And in this case, I'm printing out the state name. So when I run this code, it prints out all the states just like it did before. So let's look at both of these loops side by side. So you'll notice that the enhanced for loop on the left-hand side, which just simply says for each string, state name within states. But on the right-hand side, the old way, I have to loop through int I equals 0, I less than states.length, I plus plus, and then I have to access states bracket I one at a time and put it into my state name variable before I can process it. You'll notice that the enhanced for loop doesn't even use an index number. It just gives me all of the values in the states array one at a time, starting at the beginning, going all the way to the end, and we never even have to worry about the index number. Well, this is great. In fact, here's a couple of big advantages, right, with the enhanced for loop. There's less code, and because we're not worrying about I can't go out of bounds here. Like in the traditional for loop, what if I accidentally put I less than or equal to states.length? That's going to cause me to go out of bounds when I get to the end of the array. With an enhanced for loop, I never have to worry about going out of bounds. So since an enhanced for loop is so great, why don't we just use those all the time? There are some limitations. Let's talk about some of those limitations. So for instance, remember we talked about looping backwards or traversing backwards through the array? I could have a for loop that started at the end, states.length -1, and went to the beginning where as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus. Well, I can't do that with an enhanced for loop. An enhanced for loop starts at the beginning of the data structure and continues all the way through to the end. What about this example that I did last time where I only wanted to print out every other state and skip around? I used I equals I plus 2 or I plus equals 2 in my for loop, but I can't do that with an enhanced for loop. Again, an enhanced for loop starts at the beginning and visits every element within my array. So there are some limitations there. Another big limitation with my enhanced for loop is, let's say I'm traversing the array and I want to assign new values to my array. So with a traditional for loop, I can do this. You'll notice in that first for loop, I say states bracket I equals Florida. So what is this going to do? As I loop through, it's going to change every element of my states array to the string Florida. And then when I print them out at the bottom for loop, it's going to look like this: Florida, 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 Florida. Um, that works great with a for loop, but can I do that with a for each loop? Let's look at this. This now says for each string state name within states, state name equals Florida. Well, when I run this, you'll notice the state names didn't change. Well, the variable state name changed, but the contents of the array didn't change, because when I assign Florida to state name, I'm just updating that local variable. I'm not actually making changes to the array itself. So that's another limitation of a for each loop. However, if you just want to traverse through an entire data structure from the beginning all the way to the end, accessing each element one at a time, boy, an enhanced for loop is really, really uh, efficient because it's less code and less error prone as well. All right, so in this video, we discussed traversing the elements of a 1D array using an enhanced for loop, but we also talked about the limitations involved in doing so. That's it with this video. Thanks again so much for joining us here. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Take care.